Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, philanthropy in many minds is seen as an act of charity, a simple transfer of wealth from those who have to those who do not. And while charity will always have an essential role in addressing urgent needs, that definition is far too narrow for the realities of our time. The best minds in philanthropy today are focused on more strategic giving, moving beyond short-term relief towards long-term, structural, and sustainable change at scale. And this, of course, is more than just money. This is about expertise, innovation, and more critically, partnerships that amplify impact. And some of those best minds are with us today. Our esteemed panelists have, in their own way, been at the forefront of reshaping philanthropy, making it more effective, sustainable, and truly transformative. Filippo Grandi has dedicated his career to the protection of displaced communities, leading the UNHCR's efforts to provide not just aid, but endurable solutions for refugees worldwide. Somachi, as CEO of the Tony Elumelu Foundation, is proving the power of entrepreneurship as a vehicle for economic transformation. The foundation has directly funded over 20,000 young entrepreneurs across Africa who have gone on to create more than 800,000 jobs and generate over 4.2 billion in revenue, which I think is a perfect example of how strategic philanthropy doesn't just give, it empowers. Like all of you, I'm eager to hear their insights because we stand at a unique moment of opportunity, a global realignment where the so-called global south, or what I prefer to call the global majority, is stepping forward. And this is not a theoretical shift. The global majority is already home to 80% of the world's population. It already accounts for more than half of global GDP. And over the coming years, 3/4 of global consumption is expected to shift in this direction. And these are world-defining trends. And when you consider that nearly $2 trillion in philanthropic capital is deployed annually, the potential for impact is extraordinary. To use just one example again, the Tony Elumelu Foundation, as mentioned, but its $100 million investment in young entrepreneurs generated over $4 billion in economic activity. Now imagine what $2 trillion could do if deployed strategically and backed by the right policies, and of course aligned with the power of private sector investment. And we've of course yet to fully harness the potential of AI, big data, and predictive analytics to revolutionize philanthropy. These technologies can unlock new levels of precision in targeting resources, improving health outcomes, enhancing education, and ultimately making people's lives better in ways that we're only beginning to grasp. And then, of course, there's the fact that we're on the cusp of the largest intergenerational wealth transfer in history. Over the next few decades, some $80 trillion will be passed down to the next generation, including $26 trillion in Asia and Africa alone. Evidence suggests that younger generations are more purpose-driven and perhaps impact-oriented, and so how we engage them in philanthropy today will shape the future of giving for decades to come. Now, this is an opportunity that we must seize, and the UAE has recognized this potential and is committed to playing its part in fostering an enabling environment for philanthropy to thrive. As a global convening hub for humanitarian and philanthropic action, it hosts initiatives such as the UNHCR's largest global stockpile, ensuring, of course, rapid response to crises worldwide, As you heard, it's consistently been ranked among the top contributors of ODA relative to national income, and initiatives also, as you've heard, such as the newly launched Irth Zayed, which aims to redefine sustainable philanthropy in practice, and also reflects really an ongoing commitment to innovation in this space. But perhaps one of the UAE's greatest contributions, also as you heard, is its ability to convene. Because it's when we come together, north, south, east, west, philanthropy, government, and the business sector, that we unlock the full potential of what we can achieve. This very session is a testament to that spirit of collaboration, bringing together some of the most innovative minds in philanthropy to exchange ideas, challenge conventions, and of course inspire action. So without further delay, let's hear from our esteemed panelists on how they are redefining philanthropy in their own ways. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you, Your Excellency Badr, for your insightful opening remarks, which have set a profound context for our discussion today. His emphasis on the evolving landscape of philanthropy, the integration of technology, and the pivotal role of the UAE as a philanthropic hub and leader has provided a valuable framework for our conversation. Before we begin, maybe setting some more context to this conversation. In 2022, global philanthropic giving has reached new heights. Over $800 billion annually were dispersed to help achieve the UN SDGs. However, as Her Excellency Reem Al-Hashmi stated in our earlier conversation, the gap is growing, and unfortunately, progress on SDGs has stalled, and if anything, moving backwards. We know that over $4.3 trillion are needed to continue this progress, and traditional philanthropy can play a critical role in addressing some of these challenges and heeding the call that Her Excellency Reem had spoken about accelerating progress on SDGs and creating a greater urgency to make this progress possible. As Chief Strategy Officer of Reaching the Last Mile, I've seen firsthand how targeted, evidence-based philanthropy can transform lives, particularly in the areas of global health, disease elimination, and inclusive development. But today we have two compelling speakers that we are quite eager to hear from, particularly to speak around themes on philanthropy and how philanthropy can go beyond short-term relief to drive systemic long-term change, as well as how philanthropic investments can reach people who need them most while being efficient, scalable, and sustainable. With us today, we have His Excellency Filippo Grandi, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. His Excellency Filippo has spent over 3 decades working in humanitarian aid and refugee protection, serving as the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees since 2016. We also have with us Somachi Chris-Asoluka, CEO of the Tony Elumelu Foundation based in Nigeria. The Tony Elumelu Foundation is Africa's leading philanthropy focused on empowering entrepreneurs. And as you've heard from His Excellency Badr, the foundation has a flagship initiative helping equip 20,000 African entrepreneurs with funding, mentorship, and training. So let's kick off this discussion, and I'll start with you, Your Excellency Filippo. Over the last decade, unfortunately, the number of refugees worldwide has more than tripled, reflecting escalating conflicts and, of course, environmental factors and crises contributing to forced displacement of populations. The UNHCR is increasingly looking at innovative financing and cross-sector partnerships to address these ever-growing refugee challenges. Can you, Your Excellency, elaborate and share how philanthropy can evolve to address some of these issues, particularly in driving more sustainable and longer-term solutions for displaced populations?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to this important discussion. Now, it's a very complex question, but I'll try to just give you a few elements, food for thought. First of all, yes, I just finished speaking about this in another panel. We live in a world in crisis, and I use this word singular and plural, in crisis and in crisis, such as we have never seen. The ICRC, the Red Cross, estimates that as of the end of 2024, there were 120 active conflicts in the globe. This is incredible. And you mentioned our statistics, the refugee organization, 123 million people, refugees and displaced, mostly fleeing from crisis, fleeing from conflict, increasingly mixed with other climate change, migration movement. The whole issue is becoming very complex and complicated. We seem to have difficulties making peace, and so on. You know all that, but that's the backdrop against which we need to have this discussion, and it's not an easy one. Now, when I started in this job that I'm having now, which is more than 9 years ago, I think that one realization was very clear to all of us, that the traditional manner in which humanitarian crises were tackled, which was essentially states and specialized organizations, some NGOs, was good but not enough. That if we wanted to, like you said, to ensure that responses were sustainable, and even more important, that we could work towards solving these issues and bringing people out not only of misery, but of the dependence on aid, we need to involve a much broader spectrum of partners. So that's when we worked very much on two tracks. One is partnership with development organizations, that in the past there was a lot of fracture between humanitarian and development aid. You will hear that there is still, I contest that. I think we've made big strides in working together, much more, but we need to go further. But this is not the topic here. The topic here is our second track, philanthropy, or rather, the private sector seen in a broad way. So companies, foundations, or other non-government sources where resources can be made available. And one thing that we realized very quickly is that much as philanthropy in the traditional sense, as Badr described, giving, transfer from those to have, is still very important. You know, it may not be strategic, but I think generosity is always strategic, whichever way you exercise it. But, and so much needed in a world that shuns compassion as a cheap value. It is not. It's very important. Having made that premise, it's very true that we need, again to use Badr's word, to move towards more strategic giving, in which organizations like mine, but many others, and organizations like yours, or even a big company or a small company, can partner together as partners, not as one giving and the other receiving and spending, but as partners, where the role of the private entity or entities is not only to transfer resources, but also to transfer know-how, technology, expertise, business models. We have found, since we have embarked in what now seems quite obvious, it wasn't even 10 years ago, we have embarked more on this partnership approach with the private sector, let's call it like this, with the business. We have found much more interest on the part of business to partner with us. And this in the end results also in transfer of resources, but in a much more sustainable way. So companies would come to us and say, let's work together in Ethiopia. I give you an example. We work with the IKEA Foundation there. But let's design together what we're going to do. And we can learn a lot from a foundation like the IKEA Foundation. And by the way, they can learn a lot from what we do as well. I'm simplifying a bit, a complex exercise. It's still being developed, this model, but it is there. It is acquired, and through many different variations of this model, I think we're making important strides with results, concrete results of sustainability for all to be seen. Give me one more second to say also that all of this, like I said at the beginning, is not only to make aid more sustainable and not dependent always on the handouts. But it is also preparatory to solutions. In my world, solution means that a community of refugees is not a refugee anymore, either because they get integrated in that country, or even better, they can go back to their country, or go to a third country. Now, to prepare them for all these solutions, what we do with the business community is invaluable. It gives them skills, it gives them a sense of self-reliance, of competition, it gives them education, you name it. There's many, many strands of this, but this is enormously important to prepare for solving refugee problem. It may seem a bit of a utopia, it is so important today.
Thank you, Your Excellency. You spoke about new models for philanthropy or bringing in the private sector into this equation, and the Tony Elumelu Foundation has really paved the way for a different or alternative model for progress through empowering African entrepreneurs and a truly from Africa to Africa model. Somachi, can you speak to this model and why Tony Elumelu, of course, has embarked on this alternative model, and what learnings you've had through this?
Thank you so much. First, I must just say it's such a wonderful honor and delight to be here, back again in the UAE, to share ideas, to brainstorm and learn from each other. So we're very honored at the Tony Elumelu Foundation to be part of the WGS Summit this year. In terms of your question, the foundation is the leading philanthropy empowering young Africans from all 54 African countries. And while there are so many different ways to do philanthropy, so many different ways to give back, we've chosen entrepreneurship because we believe that that's the most transformative model for Africa's economic renaissance. And we say that because we've seen results, we've been in the field, we've seen our impact, and we know that only entrepreneurs that will do three things. One, help eradicate poverty in our lifetime. I think that for too long, the African narrative has been restricted to a basket case, a poverty case. But at the Tony Elumelu Foundation, we think that must change in our lifetime. And we know that government and corporates and big businesses cannot create the number of jobs in the millions that Africa needs for its young teeming population. So one, we believe that young entrepreneurs and the businesses can eradicate poverty in our lifetime. Two, we believe that they're only the ones equipped to create the jobs in the millions that we need on our continent. And three, we also empower them for inclusive economic empowerment. For too long, women in Africa have been marginalized and kept to the side and denied economic opportunity. Well, we believe that in order for Africa to be the competitive landscape that it can be, we must bring back young women and women entrepreneurs into the fold. So we support entrepreneurs to help achieve our 3-mission agenda, and the results have been phenomenal. Badr spoke about a few of them. We've supported 21,000 entrepreneurs. They've gone ahead to actually create 1.5 million jobs, not even 800,000 jobs, and generating $4.5 billion in revenue. With these results, we're showcasing and showing and spotlighting these young entrepreneurs, and also, engaging development organizations across the world who want to do philanthropy and giving in a different way. Last thing I'll say on this is that we have exciting partnerships with the EU, with the UNDP. In fact, today we signed a new MOU with the ODA, the Office of Development Affairs here in UAE. And we've worked with organizations like the ICRC, that's the Red Cross. Red Cross typically comes in times of emergency to give handouts and relief, but they came to us and said, we've been doing this in Africa for so many years, and we're not seeing the results we want to see. Instead of giving handouts when there's emergency, can we build economic resilience so that young people and communities do not need us, but they have the economic bandwidth to support themselves in times of emergency? So in 2018, we partnered with the ICRC, and we've been doing that yearly since then to support young entrepreneurs in marginalized communities.
That's really impressive, and congratulations to the foundation for achieving this progress and really paving a new model for giving. One thing I did want to follow up on, and this is something that we've also addressed or hoping to address through Reaching the Last Mile, is reaching last mile communities. And often the communities that are left behind when we're speaking about global development and economic progress. How does the foundation ensure that there's equitable access for this capital that you're providing
I think
entrepreneurs?
That's a great question. You know, when we started our program, a few people asked us, instead of working to support all 54 African countries, why don't you just work on the top 5, top 7 countries? You know, the usual suspects like Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, etc. And we said, you know, we don't want to do that, because if we do that, we're deepening inequality and lack of access across the continent. So first is that we operate across all 54 African countries to ensure that economic opportunity is widespread across all of Africa. Second is that we ensure that we're not just supporting entrepreneurs in the urban regions, but we're going to the hinterlands, we're going to the rural areas to make sure that we're identifying entrepreneurs from these communities and onboarding them on our program. Third is that we have a special focus on fragile areas, especially in the Sahel. So the Sahel region of Africa is home to some of the, you know, poorest African countries, but we see beyond that. We know that the Sahel region is home to resilient, hardworking, brilliant young people. And so we focus our campaigns in the Sahel so that we can reach out, identify, and onboard these young entrepreneurs. In fact, now Mali, which is in the Sahel, is one of the top countries on our program. We have thousands of entrepreneurs from Mali who are now seeing, you know, entrepreneurship as an alternate way of life. So, you know, young people will not illegally migrate, they will not join extremist communities, they will not pose a threat to security if they're economically meaningfully engaged. Young people don't want to be vulnerable to these vices that they face. And so what we're seeing in Mali and across the Sahel is that when you offer young people hope, when you give them a means, tools, resources, access to start an enterprise, you don't only turn around their lives, but you turn around lives in their entire communities. Because other young people see them and say, hey, instead of doing this, I want to be like him or her. I want to pursue entrepreneurship. And so we're seeing our model of empowering young African entrepreneurs as revolutionary, really, socially, economically, politically, and obviously mentally, etc.
Thank you so much for that intervention. We have 5 minutes left, and I do want to pivot the conversation a bit to speak about the role of innovation, technology, and in the context of the World Government Summit this year, the role of AI in this space. Your Excellency Filippo, could you kind of elaborate on where you see the role of technology in advancing progress and integration of refugee and displaced populations to make sure that you're achieving the goals that you need through UNHCR?
I'll try in a couple of minutes to say 3 important things. One is I want to second the point made by Somachi so much about offering opportunities to people so that, among other things, they don't unnecessarily move. Because we don't want to stop legitimate movement, of refugee movement, but many people go into the hands of criminals because they have no other option. And I keep telling governments in Europe, in North America, in other rich countries, instead of obsessively looking at controls and pushbacks as the only way to counter population movements, look at opportunities that you give along the way. This is the most important thing. And I'm so grateful for what you do and also what you said. Second, technology. Yes, in 2 words. It's obvious. Look, even an organization like ours that does pretty straightforward work of, you know, we do a lot of legal human rights work, but we also we assist millions and millions of people that are in need. You know, we have revolutionized the way we distribute aid in the past 10 years. We moved from cumbersome, big, costly logistical operation to cash operation that are essentially run through very simple technological means, cards or otherwise. You have no idea how much the private sector has been helpful. This is a very easy example. With the Vodafone Foundation, we run a program in dozens of African schools that are in remote areas and that host refugees, among others, to give them connectivity so that they can, although they're very far in remote areas, kids can learn things that otherwise they would be cut off from. Again, a simple example in which technology, simple technology, but then of course, and then, you know, one of the key functions of my organization is to register people, is to ensure that people that are on the move are documented. This is a fundamental a fundamental act of identity giving, right? To people that are at risk of losing that identity, and for that, technology is absolutely important. But before I close, can I say, we do a lot in this region, and I want to mention in terms of innovation, not just technologically, but also how we organize aid. We've launched a couple of years ago a global Islamic fund for refugees. This is very innovative. This is the first relief fund that is constituted as a capital, of which, together with the Islamic Development Bank, we use the revenue to reinvest in projects. You see, this is fairly innovative, and it is run according to Islamic principles. So it's meant really to attract capital from this region. We have a Zakat fund. We've had it among the first organization established in 2017. $250 million have transited through that. That has allowed us to tap into capital that previously was not channeled towards this. I can give you many examples. We partner with gaming organization, talking of technology. So there's a lot of innovation out there, partly technological, partly, might call it managerial. They see it underway, merits attention, especially in this region. Strong appeal, a shout out to all of us, all of you out there. Contact us and we can tell you more.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We have 1 minute left, and maybe one final question for the panelists. His Excellency Badr spoke about the great wealth transfer, and we're seeing a new generation of philanthropists that want to do things differently than maybe their parents have done. What is the one thing from the context of your own work you think they should prioritize when they're thinking about their giving and the type of giving that they should be doing? Maybe Somachi first?
I think, just very briefly, I think that we're eliminating middlemen in this generation. I think that for too long, when you're giving, when organizations give, there's too many middlemen in the middle who end up taking the bulk of the transfer and leaving pennies and fragments for the people who are actually vulnerable. So I think we should eliminate middlemen. 2, I think we must focus on data and impact measurement so that we can track the work that's been done and review the work that's been done and ensure that we're on the right track, because it's very important to keep learning as you do. And I think finally we should center young people. I think for too long development has been government to government, but I think that young people, especially young entrepreneurs, must be at the center of philanthropy as we know it in order for it to have the maximum impact.
And I would say, help us ensure the sustainability of what we do. I think today the biggest challenge for humanitarian aid is not only that it is insufficient for so many crises, but that it is not sustainable. Yeah. If you make aid, if you help people in a manner that is sustainable, like you do, offering them opportunities to be self-reliant, then you can move emergency aid to where it's more needed, where there is an immediate emergency. At the moment, a lot of aid is sunk into protracted situations that offer no sustainability. But I think that of all the partnerships that we are developing with different entities to ensure the sustainability of aid and of the people receiving aid, the private sector, foundations, corporations are the most valuable partner. Strong appeal to all of you to work with us on that.
Somachi, Your Excellency Filippo, thank you very much for your thought leadership, and to our audience for joining this critical conversation. As you heard from our esteemed speakers, philanthropy is evolving, becoming more strategic, more collaborative, and more results-driven. As we leave here today, let us remember that the future of philanthropy is not just about giving. It is about investing in change, ensuring impact, and building sustainable and scalable solutions that outlive us all. Thank you all.